My inheritance has cost me. The car and gadgets are nice. And I've almost gotten used to the smell in the cave. It's the criminals. Since my father died, they've focused their attention on me.
Hey man, somebody killed this lady.
And the people around me. My father's enemies have gotten more twisted with age, more violent and suicidal.
Crashing destroyed with no survivors.
Because they know their inevitable end is near. They've seen Batman die. They've seen each other die.
I can't believe they killed him. Yeah, man, things are getting really bad out here.
The Riddler.
This puzzle is far more than any mere game.
Dr. Death.
You and I go way back, Batman.
Two-Face.
I still believe in Harvey Dent.
All gone. Like the life I hoped for beyond this mask. Everything I have, everything I am, is because of him. I'm the Batman's daughter. I am the Huntress. And tonight, I'm hunting the man who destroyed my life.
Hello and welcome to the Huntress Podcast. This is episode 52. We're talking about Justice League of America number 172, I Accuse. I'm Ashford, and along with me is Laurel. Hello, Laurel.
Hello, Ashford.
And we also have Diane. Hello, Diane.
Hello, Ashford.
Okay, so this is pretty neat. This is part 2. Several weeks ago when we covered Justice League of America 171 to talk about this Helena Wayne story with her and the annual JSA, JLA team-ups. When I say that, I mean Justice Society of America and Justice League of America, of course. And now we're going to come to this stunning whodunit conclusion. This is pretty intense stuff, don't you think?
Yeah, everyone is suspicious of everyone and no one likes being suspected, and who can blame them?
You know what? I actually bought into this suspense. I was really reading it going, okay, what's going to come of this? Like, who done it? I was very intrigued. Mm-hmm. So we did get some feedback. This was on April 13th. As you know, here on the Huntress Podcast, we alternate. We come out bi-monthly. All right? Bi-weekly and bi-monthly, is that the same thing?
Well, bi-monthly is every 2 months, and bi-weekly is every 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering, like, is that interchangeable, like Fat Chance, Slim Chance? Okay, so bi-weekly. This comes out bi-weekly, not twice a week. This is where we alternate. We'll do a Helena Bertinelli podcast, then we'll do a Helena Wayne podcast, and we just keep seesawing back and forth, volleying back and forth, if you will. But we did get some feedback April 13th by Doppelganger. Doppelganger says, the Justice League always had a rotating chairman, while the Justice Society had only 3 chairmen before Crisis, that is. First Flash for 2 issues, the Green Lantern for 1 issue, and then Hawkman was the permanent chairman. As to the Adventure comic series you previously covered, this tale was published in between issues 465 and 466. As in 465, Mr. Terrific was seen joining the Justice Society at the end of the tale as they departed for Earth 1. And in 466, all the Justice Society, including Black Canary, were assembled for Terrific's funeral. What do you think about that?
Well, he certainly corrected us. Somebody had asked about, was Hawkman the chairperson the whole time? And I thought he wasn't, and now it sounds like he pretty much was. So thank you for that.
And they also gave us a link to Earth 1, Earth 2, blogspot.com, and that is Earth-1-Earth-2TWO.blogspot.com, DC Multiverse, and this looks like a great resource. So we thank you for that. And also on Twitter, we have, when we posted this one, episode 50, when we were discussing Justice League of America number 171, Dr. Pop Culture BGSU. at Dr. Pop Culture BUG on Twitter. This person responded at JSA Presents. So that's pretty neat. Good.
Is that the podcast that used to be going for the Justice Society?
Yes.
Okay. Man, I need, I'm so behind on podcast listening, and people keep pointing out like this ones that I really need to check out. And I think, how am I ever going to catch up if I keep adding new things? And I like reading regular books too. And
I know.
It's like I'm never going to catch up, but some people have the neatest stuff out there. There's a lot of references, a lot of places that we could learn from. And I wish I had time to do it a thoroughly good job.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, we'll do the best we can. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm putting things on the boat and throwing things off the boat 24/7. To be honest with you. So, Diane,
as long as the boat doesn't sink, you're okay.
Yeah. So, Diane, I'm looking at this cover for Justice League of America 172. What do you think about this?
This is literally the only Wonder Woman appearance in this issue is on the cover. But anyway, That's why I was confused. Yeah. Yeah, I will say though that I do like the composition of the cover by Dick Giordano. I like the fact that everyone is in suspense, and we've got Batman at the center there saying, "There is only one member of our group who could have turned traitor and become a murderer, you." And so he's pointing at someone, and that someone is wearing a red cape. So as a reader, you're led to believe that maybe Superman is a person, and it's a great way of building suspense. And then of course you find out in the actual story who the murderer is, but the murderer is in fact featured on the cover, so it's quite exciting. I quite like how it's composed.
Remember when we were covering America versus the Justice Society of America, they had a issue called I Accuse.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, what do you think about this one?
I like it. I agree. I like the positioning, the four characters. You've got like the background characters, and then Batman looks like he's in the middle, and then there's the person very close to the, the foreground person that we can't see. It is really nice. It's a really nice depth there instead of just being a poster kind of look. They're in action. They're moving around. And okay, I have to be sort of girly here for a minute, but man, Red Tornado is rocking some striped legging that's just bizarre. I had no idea he had leggings like that. I've never seen him in the past. So it's like, okay. And then I do have one other. Now this is going to be a little off topic and kind of, again, a weird question, but the boots that Power Girls got on, those pirate boots, was that a thing for like how long, or did that come and go? Because I've never been a fan of it, but do you guys have any idea when that came in and out of vogue?
Are we talking about Power Girls when you said the boots, or the boots being trendy in the 70s?
I guess the boots being trendy in general, because I'm assuming that's why she has them, right?
Yeah, I believe they were trendy in the 1970s, and then they went out of style. But then in the case of Power Girls, she kind of wore them consistently, especially in the 2000s, I think, is when those boots came back, because she did have the, I tend to call it the fitness instructor outfit that she had in the 90s when she was Atlantean.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that the boots, in general were popular, I think, only in the 70s, but then, she kind of continued to wear them in the 80s.
So she kept hers. Okay.
And then by the 90s, when she took on the fitness instructor outfit, when she became Atlantean, she had a completely different suit. She had a bodysuit. And then the boots just kind of came back, when she got her original costume back for JSA. And so, yeah, those boots were they kind of made a comeback in the 2000s for Power Girl, but not in general.
Well, thank you. I know it's sort of a weird off-side topic thing, but character designs and stuff like that stick out sometimes. And I'm like, okay, when was this supposed to be, hip? Because some of it is just weird.
I do like what you said as far as the depth on this cover. That's pretty cool. And I didn't notice Reddy there with weird leggings until you pointed out. Now I can't unsee it.
Yeah, this is wild, isn't it?
So, Diane, could you give us the synopsis to this one? Justice League of America, number 172, please.
Absolutely. After concluding there is a murderer amongst them, Earth-1 Superman divides the JSA and JLA into smaller teams of 2 to conduct a thorough investigation to find out who murdered Terry Sloan, also known as Mr. Terrific. While none of the heroes are comfortable with being suspected of murder, they all agree to take on the role Superman assigns them. The 2 Green Lanterns and Dr. Fate secure the satellite to prevent anyone from escaping, and Huntress and Batman team up to investigate the scene of the crime. Huntress thoroughly re-examines the timeline of events to piece together where everyone was at the time of Terry's death and what details fell out of place. During her introspection, Huntress considers the possibility that Terry may have been going senile, which is dismissed by Alan Scott. At the scene of the crime, Batman discovers a piece of metal with small depressions in the shape of fingertips indicating someone of super strength may be responsible for the murder. Huntress then decides to use the JLA computer to connect to the JSA computer on Earth 2 to verify her suspicions, but the computer immediately explodes, fatally injuring the Huntress. As Dr. Fate tends to her injuries with magic healing, Batman shares his conclusions with the 2 teams. Having pieced together all the evidence both he and Huntress gathered up, Batman concludes that the Spirit King has possessed Jay Garrick's body sometime prior to the JSA's Earth-1 visit. The JSA and JLA attempt to capture the Spirit King in Jay's body, but the latter manages to escape back to Earth-2. The JSA return to Earth-2 following after him, leaving the JLA stranded inside the satellite. And this concludes 172.
Okay, well, real quick, we didn't have the credits here. We've got writer Jerry Conway, Dick Dillon and Frank McLaughlin is artists, Ben Oda letterer, Jerry, I think that's Sherpay, colorist, and Ross Andrew, editor. Okay, well, I don't know if we just want to do overall opinions and then dig in on the Huntress a little bit more. Why don't we approach it from that way today? Ashford, what was your initial impression of the book as a whole, and then we'll get more detailed as we go along.
I really enjoyed the read, and I loved Huntress's recap at the beginning. I appreciated it. Sometimes that's it might be laborious or whatever to read recaps, but with this, it helped me understand a little bit more what was going on in that last issue. And as far as exposition, it was just done well. So, and I like the fact that they gave it to her. So. But I enjoyed the whole issue because again, I wasn't familiar with the story, so I genuinely was wrapped in this whodunit type setup. So I was into it.
Diane?
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way about the whodunit structure of this story. I do like the fact that they don't really give any giveaways on who the murderer could be. You know, I like the fact that the first issue established that, okay, someone absolutely murdered Mr. Terrific, but it's not any of the villains that they know of that's actually present, you know. It has to be one amongst themselves, so that created an interesting precedent for issue number 2, where they have to piece together all of the evidence to, you know, figure out, okay, who amongst us actually killed Mr. Terrific and why did that happen? So it was known at some point that the Spirit King had escaped. And knowing the Spirit King's powers, there was only one conclusion to draw. He was possessing the body of one of the JSA members. And it had to be JSA because the Spirit King came from Earth 2. So it had to be someone on the JSA that had to have been the murderer, because they had to have come with that JSA onto the JLA satellite on Earth 1, or the JLA satellite orbiting Earth 1. So that narrowed it down to at least someone on the JSA team. Figuring out who on the JSA team was the part that required quite a bit of work. And so it was interesting, it was interesting following Batman and Huntress's investigation. And when they especially found that one piece of metal, that further narrowed it down to three or four people, or several people really, because there's a lot of superpower people on there. So it was great. It was a great way of keeping the reader engaged and actually figuring out, along with the heroes, who may have been responsible. So you're not just, reading about Batman and Huntress solving a case. You're actually actively participating yourself. You're also trying to figure out who done it.
And what's cool about this is the reason why we're covering this issue, of course, Helena Wayne is in it, and we're following the adventures of Helena Wayne on this podcast. But what's neat is this is a big event. Mr. Terrific died, and we didn't have to follow this crossover. We didn't have to, and it happened within a story of like a main book. So like, I always wonder, like, if it's a big DC event, why can't it just happen in Justice League?
Yeah, you get tired of them having to make separate things all the time.
Yeah. So I mean, I know it's for economic purposes, but I think it would be the same. It would kind of, I don't know. I feel like if you didn't have to, you would buy it if you felt like you didn't have to buy extra books. Just do it within the title of Justice League of America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you could perfectly well do that. Have sort of the flagship title be the backbone of the whole thing. Everything comes out of it, and therefore you could do whatever story you wanted to that way. I think that would be the way to go. I totally agree with you on that. And that way, too, you could build in, like this Terry Sloan thing. We did have the introduction of him at the end of the issue with the Justice Society, so that made it handy. I mean, because otherwise he just joined long enough to die. That doesn't, that's not a good look.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's dig in a little bit more. We've got initially the, I don't know, on page 2, I don't know if you guys can look that up. We've got, I love the look between Huntress and Power Girl. They're sort of like, okay. They're exchanging this, here we go. Love that. I do like the flashback. Definitely. That explained a lot of things, made sure we were clear on where we're at, gave us all the clues that were done last issue, which is good too. I like that she's considered the equal of Batman in the detecting department. And I think she's doing a really good job in that role too. It's not just a token, oh, we're just naming her to this position. No, she actually gets to make some points. That I really like that. So what did you think about the detecting, Diane?
Well, I do like that this particular issue is very Huntress heavy. So it's not, the focus is not so much on Batman, but on the Huntress, because in the 2 pages that's recapping the events of the previous issue, we're kind of given insight into Helena Wayne's mind, how she actually processes information, how very meticulously she looks at every detail. So the thing I like about those 2 pages is that, she's revisiting the timeline of events in her mind. She's, okay, this is where we were at the start of this whole thing. This is what happened in the events that followed, and this is where we're at now. So she's introspecting. She's trying to figure out, okay, where were we when all of this was happening, without us knowing anything? Where was everyone at the time that Mr. Terrific, died? Is everyone accounted for? Is everyone where they were supposed to be when he passed away? And more importantly, is there anything that feels out of place? Is there any behavior that feels out of place? So she's thinking about all of that in those 2 pages. And she's trying to piece together. There's even one panel where she's kind of looking at Superman and thinking, is it possible? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because the major point in the case is that an explosion took place, but it wasn't, an actual an actual bomb going off. Something or someone actually broke that piece off the wall, you know. So she's thinking, okay, so it had to, I think she was already thinking at that point, it had to have been someone with super strength, because absolutely I can't do that, and neither can Batman. And so it has to be someone who has enough power to literally break off a wall of the Justice League satellite. And so I think she was narrowing that list in her mind, but even then it's hard to narrow, because you've got Superman, you've got Zatanna, you've got Dr. Fate, you've got Power Girl, you've got the 2 speedsters, and you've got the 2 Green Lanterns. That's literally 8 people that could literally be responsible. And of course, you can't rule out Red Tornado either, even though it's a robot. What motive would he have to murder anyone? Not to mention, why would the Spirit King want to possess the body of the robot? But then again, that could, make it less suspicious, and so that would make it even more likely that he would take over the body of a robot. So she's making all of those deductions in her head, and that's the impression that I get when I look at that one panel where she's looking at Superman, where she's possibly considering it had to have been someone superpowered who did this, And so I really love that. I really love how we're brought inside the mind of Helena Wayne in those 2 pages, and then when Batman and Huntress actually investigate together and they actually unearth more evidence together, it's not just Batman giving his own thoughts on what he thinks happened, but the Huntress also gets to participate as well. It's like, okay, taking what you just found just now, let me get to the JLA computer and let me connect to the JSA computer and see if we can validate, what your thoughts are, what your suspicions are. And in doing so, the thing exploded. But before, she passed out, she was able to say, okay, Bruce, this is what's going on. And then, of course, she passes out. But I do like that she's got a very active role in this. We get to get inside her mind, but we also get to see how she actually behaves as a detective. And she's very much presented as Batman's equal when it comes to the detective skills. She's very meticulous. She thinks everything through. She considers all possibilities, including the ones that the other JSA members don't want to hear. And she doesn't go without every stone unturned. And so it's great to see that with the character.
I do wonder if I had a little bit of a disadvantage because I don't know the Spirit King. I would have liked it if they could have just given me a little bit more of that at the last issue when Terry was talking about him, so I had a really good handle on his powers. I think that would have helped me follow along with the mystery a little bit better. But, it's fine without it. She's still got to detect. I just didn't have that piece, in my mind that it had to be somebody from the Justice Society. It didn't occur to me that, to bring it over because he was on Earth too. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to ask about, we talk about generational, the Justice Society is generational. And several issues back, we had where the older men of the group were sort of, I don't know, they were dismissive of Power Girl. Do you remember this? And
yes,
we had that break between, the age groups. I think we're getting that again here because Huntress brings up the fact that Mr. Terrific could simply have been mistaken, that he was an older man. And man, Green Lantern takes some exception to that. So, Ashford, what did you think? It's another sort of conflict between the generations.
Yeah, I thought that was... I thought that was just conflict for conflict's sake. But, yeah... You're right about that as far as like this generational divide. I'm looking at Alan Scott pounding that table. I
always thought the great strength was that they had different generations. But
right.
This is the second time where they've sort of really thrown that in our face.
There was that, and then there was also the thing where I can't remember if it was Alan Scott and someone else where they were like they didn't listen to Superman, but when Dr. Fate mentioned it, like, okay, we'll do that.
Yeah, I didn't care for it. Diane, what did you think?
I'm of two minds when it comes to that scene. On the one hand, I do understand what the writer is trying to establish. He's trying to make a point about the different ways that the younger heroes think versus the older heroes. And he's, we've got a young woman like Helena Wayne, who is at this point in time, this is 1979, so she's about 21 or 22 around this time. So she's very young, she's been doing this for quite a few years now. And she's very experienced at this point, certainly a lot more experienced than when she first started out, right? But the thing about Helena is she's trying to consider all possibilities. She's not trying to, as hard as it is to consider that, people can be wrong, especially when it's a valued colleague like, Terry Sloan. I can totally understand, that may be uncomfortable for Alan Scott, and some of the other JSAs because they've known him longer, they've worked with him before. And Helen is thinking, well, what if he's wrong? What if he is mistaken? We can't rule that possibility out, Well, I don't think that he's wrong. We can't, rule out the possibility that he could also be wrong.
Yeah, and he's going senile.
Yeah, and try to make a point that, one possibility could be his age,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when Alan Scott took offense, because he's basically saying, are you saying that because we're old, we're not capable of thinking as we used to? And he takes offense to that. So, and it's understandable, I think, in Alan Scott's point of view, because it can come off as ageist, especially in the way that Helena Wayne framed, her thoughts there. But yeah, I think that the point there is that they're trying to establish, the different ways in which younger generations of heroes think versus older generations. But at the same time, it feels out of place in a story that's supposed to be focusing on a murder. So it kind of distracts from that a bit. So on the one hand, I get what they're doing. On the second hand, it feels out of place in a story where you're supposed to be focusing on who did what, who murdered whom, and why.
Yeah, well, or she could have been pushing nosy questions onto somebody who took offense. That would have worked, because I think partly it's stress. And these people are under some pressure here, A friend looking at friend, as possible suspects. I mean, that's got to be rough.
And also the whole thing of, until we solve this, none of us can leave. Adding to that stress.
That's right. They made this Green Lantern fate bubble thing around the satellite.
And that's what was scary too, because they mentioned it, like, man, this guy's pretty powerful. So it's like, could he be an unreliable narrator? That was one of the things Fate, I was thinking. Mean? Yes, Dr. Fate.
Yeah, well, he's shown so many powers at this point that, it's practically like godlike powers the way we're going. We're going to give the Spectre a run for his money.
Yes.
Oh, all right. Well, then we've got the thing blowing up, and I love she calls him Uncle Bruce when she talks to Batman. I just love that so much. We've got that part of this, we're endangered doing our jobs. That was an interesting little side thing. What did you think about having her injured? And, was the story helped or hurt by that? Diane?
I'm actually looking at that page right now, and I think prior to that, Batman shows that there is a small piece of metal with very small indentations indicating not fingerprints, indicating finger impressions, right? And so Huntress is looking at that with suspicion, and I'm wondering what she's thinking about when she sees those impressions there. And so she says, you know what, let's go to the monitor room and let's check something on the computer. And I'm wondering what it is that she wants to check, And so I guess, so I really love the fact that, she looks very suspiciously at those indentations, says, okay, I need to check the computer real quick. So I think she's already processing that it's not just someone from Earth 2 who the Spirit King has possessed, but it's someone with enough power, enough strength to do that. So who amongst that could have done it, And this is when she starts, taking all the information. Like, they know that the Spirit King was in Gateway City, which is Wonder Woman City, by the way. And he stole a seismic machine there. He stole something of that nature. So she's probably thinking, let me check with the JSA computer real quick. Let's see what's on our files and let's see what we know. And I think because she specifically went to check, with the JSA computer on Earth 2 is why the computer exploded. Someone caused it to explode so that she doesn't dig up, further information that could actually very easily unearth who the person was that killed Mr. Terrific. So, yeah, I do think that the boom that happens there is done very respectfully. Helena is not in an exploitive position, so it's great to see that. But yeah, what I'm wondering about is how come only Huntress is on fire here and not Bruce, since he's kind of nearby, So yeah, it's a big enough explosion that both of them are caught in it. But why is Huntress the only one burning? So I think that's the first question I have, and when it comes to that moment with Bruce there, I think this is perhaps the first time in a JSA JLA story where he actually kind of thinks of her as a daughter, and this is different from like the last time that we saw him think of her as a daughter, because the first time that we saw that, he was thinking, what? Do I envy my Earth 2 counterpart because he got married to Catwoman and had a daughter with her? Or, what is it saying about me? He's not having that thought right now. He's thinking, oh my God, you know what? This woman is hurt. She's injured and she could possibly die. And this is, I think, the first time that he thinks of her as close to his own daughter. So he's already thinking of her as family at this point, And while he kind of thought of her as family prior to this, it's hitting closer to home because there's a very real possibility she could die. So I think that's an interesting moment there where he's like, oh my God, this is really happening. You can't die. You're like a daughter to me, so I think that's great, but I also like Dr. Fate. He steps in and says, you know what? I can be of more service here than you. And he's like, what can you do? It's like, dude, I am Dr. Fate. I can do anything. so yeah, I love that moment. So he's kind of, thinking of Helena Wayne here, the Huntress, as his own daughter. And Dr. Fate just kind of steps in and says, I think I should take it from here. He's like, what can you do? It's like, I'm Dr. Fate. I can do anything. So I love that. And so, of course, he works his magic there. But yeah, I think that's a great scene.
You'd never have the emotional Batman these days.
You really don't.
This would never work with the God Batman. But in this, it's touching.
Do you think they're toning that down nowadays? The Bat God?
I think that depends, because right now with Infinite Frontier, there's not so much interaction between Batman and his biological son Damian, although that might change with the Robin book. So I guess we'll see. I guess it depends on the writer. I think Joshua Williamson, who's writing the Damian Wayne Robin book, will probably write, moments where Bruce shows vulnerability and emotion towards his son. And we're probably going to see that from Talia al Ghul as well. So I think it depends on the writer, but I can definitely see Joshua Williamson definitely, getting into that with the Robin book. Don't know if James Tynion and Jorge Jimenez are going to do that as well in the main Batman book. And Mariko Tamaki and Dan Mora are kind of developing the whole Magistrate storyline in the Detective Comics book. So we're probably not going to see that in the two main Batman books, but most definitely probably in the Robin book.
What's interesting about this story, is that the audience at the time, they don't know this for sure, but this death sticks with Mr. Terrific, Terry Sloan. I'm talking about even to the They're the today times. Mm-hmm. So you get the legacy of someone else picking up the mantle, but he never comes back. So when Huntress gets hit with this explosion, and especially if you're bought in, you're like, well, they just killed a character off. Do you mean tell me she's about to be maimed? So when Dr. Fate, when he does this, it's like, oh, okay. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was bought in on this story. So it was just interesting with all the twists and turns and Batman talking to Flash as a forensic scientist.
It would have been kind of wild if she'd had a permanent scar or something from this.
I do like the Power Girl decides to tend to her after that, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, so I guess that's also indicating that, I think that's further indicating that Huntress and Power Girl are, friends, and not just best friends, but they seem to be very close friends as well. So she's like, you know what, I'll take it from here. I'll tend to my best friend. And I do like that one panel where, Batman says, okay, well, now let's share the information that Huntress and I unearthed. This piece of metal right here, it's got indentations of fingers. They're too small to be Superman's. So it points to a very obvious choice of Power Girl. So I like how Power Girl, who is, tending to Helena Wayne here, is got that shocked look on his face of, what? You don't actually suspect me? And he's like, no, because you're the obvious choice. Too obvious. So who would have tried to frame you is what's going on in his mind. So I do like that one panel there.
Yeah, there's some good art in here, that's for sure.
Yeah, I definitely love that look on Power Girl's face. She's like, what? Batman, surely you don't believe that I did this. Like, no, Power Girl, you're the obvious suspect. Too obvious. And so it's just the execution of that is so brilliant. I love it. Yeah. But yeah, it's just I like how it's all been building up to this moment. So now finally Batman is saying, okay, here is what's going on. They're trying to frame Power Girl, possibly, but after examining every piece of evidence, including the fact that, a seismic, machine was stolen, they were trying to draw the Flash out, but it was definitely not the Barry Allen Flash, because this happened on Earth 2, so it had to have been the Jay Garrick Flash. So, yeah, so yes, Batman points out, no, it could not have been you, Barry, because you have no motive, not to mention you're here on Earth 1. This happened on Earth 2. So, yeah, that only leaves one more obvious suspect, and that's Jay Garrick. So, yeah, whether or not the details could have been better thought out, I will say, yeah, kind of, because I don't think that Jay Garrick could have, put small indentations, especially since I would imagine his hand is about the same size as Superman's, if not similar. So, yeah, but I do think that the way the build-up is actually very well done, and how the execution of how Batman lays out the evidence is even well done.
Yeah, then the Spirit King pops out and escapes, because despite our super special bubble to keep all the heroes in the satellite, we didn't think about the transmatter device. I'm like, oh, jeez, guys. So he does escape, despite their machinations there to try to make it so nobody can. Little irony there. And then we get our little denouement here of the teams. They're going to take Terry back to Earth 2 to be properly honored and buried there. The problem I have, there's one issue with that. I found that aspect is right. They've got to go do this. They've got to try to find Jay. That makes sense. What I don't like is the juxtaposition of that panel with the heroes laughing because they're not sure how they're going to get out. And so they're doing that, few kind of relieved. Okay, we've solved everything. So I know there's a tension release laugh kind of thing that you might do there. But on the page, it just hit me wrong.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That felt odd to me. It's like, okay, so it's like 1 minute, the two panels on the left, is depicting the heroes being sad that this happened to Terry Sloan. And so they're going back to Earth 2, not just to give Terry a proper burial, but also to capture the Spirit King who is possessing Jay's body. And then next minute, the Justice League is like, oh, look, we're stuck here. And then they just start laughing. Oh, I just feel so out of place there. I don't know, considering that all this entire storyline was a crisis, I would think I wouldn't be laughing if I was the Justice League. I would not be laughing that I'm stranded, in a bubble that the two Green Lanterns made with Dr. Fate's help. And if Dr. Fate is back on Earth 2, is there an expiration date to this bubble, or how do we undo it? So I think it's going to fall on Zatanna to figure out how to undo Dr. Fate's magic there. So she's the only sorceress on the Justice League team. Imagine if she wasn't there.
Yeah, the layout of the panels is, I think, what bothered me. I think also, the age group that's going to be reading this comic, if your heroes are having a little bit of a laugh, then, oh, okay, everything's okay, if you see what I mean.
That, yeah. I was thinking that, and also, because I don't know the next issue, if it's something where it's dramatically different, it's like, hey, we don't even want to explain how they got out of there.
Well, I haven't read that issue of Justice League that follows this one, but the immediate story that follows this story is actually in Adventure Comics 466, which is when they actually bury Terry Sloan. But the focus there is not on Terry Sloan. Huntress and Power Girl end up, staying behind at the JSA headquarters to guard the place. Why? I don't know. But they guard the place, and we especially don't find out if, they got, how they got the Spirit King out of Jay's body. I don't think that was ever brought up ever again. But yeah, so yeah, 466 is, I would say, the actual follow-up to the story, and they have the funeral, but Huntress and Power Girl stay behind, and during them staying behind at the JSA headquarters, Huntress decides to tell Power Girl about why the JSA disbanded the first time in 1954. So that next story is both the follow-up to that story, but also an origin story to the modern JSA, and that's going to establish a detail that becomes a permanent fixture in their history, even post-crisis. So,
well, look forward to discussing that.
Yeah.
Ashford, any thoughts on this one? Any final? I mean, I like the art. We've talked about that a little bit. Sometimes Huntress looks like she's got antennas on her head as opposed to, I don't know, what are they supposed to be? Molded of some sort? Molded plastic of some sort? But that's a really minor nitpick. Otherwise, this is really well done.
Well done, fun. I thought even with the peculiar ending, I thought this was satisfactory, especially if you read this as a two-parter. You felt like you got what you needed, and for us, following this because of Helena Wayne, she was front and center. So it wasn't like, oh, there are 4 panels, and that was it. So I thought we got bang for our buck. What about you, Diane?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I felt that one of the hallmarks of this issue for me is that Helena Wayne has a very prominent role in it. She's not just there as, background decoration. She actually has an active role, so that is fantastic. You can tell that DC at this time is actually pushing the Huntress. They're actually actively promoting the Huntress. And that becomes important because Helena Wayne around this time starts, getting featured not just in Batman Family, right? Which we did cover the 3 issues of Batman Family that she's in. But when that book gets cancelled, they don't just scrap the Huntress. They actually have her appear in the Wonder Woman book moving forward. So she actually starts becoming the hero of her own story. She starts fronting her own solo series, so that's going to be very exciting to talk about as well.
Yeah, both of these crossovers, JSA, JLA, in the Justice League book, they've been good for her. And we've read 3 now, right? Do I have that right?
We've read...
Or just 2? The one where they fought the time displaced things.
I believe this is our fourth Justice League story, because the first two Justice League stories that we read was one story arc, and then these next two issues that we just covered is a second story arc. So technically we've read 4 issues of Justice League with featuring...
but it's only 2 stories that we've read.
Yes, we've read only 2 stories.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out, because I remember her having a decent... They presented her well, because I remember that Ralph Dibny was sort of saying, oh, we'll get used to this and blah, blah, blah. And she shut that down in a hurry.
Yeah.
I remember her standing up for herself.
Yeah, she had her moments of greatness there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was able to shine there a little bit, and now she's has an even bigger role now. She can tell that direction is working, because her role keeps expanding in, I don't know, the universe of books, right?
Yeah, the DC multiverse. She's I would say out of all the Earth 2 characters, she's the one that gets to visit Earth 1 the most. Because when she's not with the JSA, she does, occasionally appear on Earth 1. So
I think that does it for us.
So this is awesome stuff. Catch us next time when we cover a Helena Bertinelli story, and that will be Showcase 94, number 5. And the reason why I know that is because of Diana's excellent index cataloging. So
yeah, that spreadsheet is really good, Diane.
Thank you.
It is awesome. So yeah, check that out if you're following along with us. The next one we'll do is Showcase 94, number 5 on episode 53. And let us know what you think about this one. This was a 2-parter. What do you think about this Justice League of America, Justice Society of America crossover with Huntress prominently in front and center? This is something where if you're following Justice League of America and you're like, oh, okay, these are 2 characters, you're being exposed to this Helena Wayne, detective, leader, competent, more than competent character. What did you think about her? What did you think about some of our takes? What did we leave out? Please write to us at writonnetwork@gmail.com. That is WRIGHT on network@gmail.com. You can leave us a comment like Doppelganger did on the Huntress Podcast.com. You can listen to this podcast on Spotify. Type in the Batgirl /Huntress. You'll find us. We're also on Apple Podcasts. I want to give a special shout out to our Patreon subscribers: K-Say, Alan Wright, DJ Merck, the Pod Crasher Tim Price, Mark Ross, aka Cluck Trent, Mark Blair, Rob Kelly over at the Fire and Water Podcast Network, and Paul Hicks for Waiting for Doom DCOCD podcast. This is cool stuff. Stick with us. We're having fun talking about our favorite character, the Huntress. Till next time, take care of each other. Bye-bye, y'all.